I used to be feared, but time, the cruel mistress. 2 decades have robbed me of my prestige. They call me short, squat. How dare they?
Sulking in the shadow of your former glory.
Who dares?
Someone who would like to give you the chance to shine again. Someone who knows what it's like to feel glory slide through your fingers like anguished sand.
Ha! What could you possibly do? For I, Skeletor!
I can offer you modernization.
Modernization?
If you think you can handle it.
Of course I can! I am Skeletor! The lost time! The advances! Flowing in me! This is too much! Too much power! No! I have the
Ladies and gentlemen, this is internet personality Vangelus here with a review of Masters of the Universe Classics Skeletor! The purpose of these guys is basically to give the Four Horsemen another shot at He-Man, and let them more or less make a line aimed directly at all those hardcore dudes over on He-Man.org. And with some pretty surprising results. I went into this line with a lot of trepidation because the toys look like the kind of things that look great in 1 or 2 photos, but in hand would be kind of disappointing. And they're anything but! This guy is a beautiful fusion of classic retroness and smoothness, combined with just a touch of that wacko Four Horsemen musculature and fantasticality that was pumped to even bigger degrees in the MOTU 200X line. I don't get the notation very much either. Now, while Skeletor can strike the classic 80s He-Man pose, the kind of half squat, half crouch, half I'm gonna jump, half I'm, full of bowel worms, he also boasts some decent posability, although just for comparison, you can see how well he does that classic He-Man pose when you check him out next to Wonder Bread Fisto here. Wonder Bread Fisto has problems. We'll just get him out of here. Skeletor's neck is on a really nice and vaguely free ball joint. It lets him emote nicely, but it does come at the cost of his blue-ass neck being really exposed. I kinda wish they'd figured out some way of getting a soft rubber sheath around the neck. Oh dear. In order to facilitate this posability while maintaining an aesthetic purity amidst his outfit. My favorite part of the arms is, oddly enough, the fact that they can go in this close to the torso. It's a very well done universal shoulder. The bicep swivel follows the sculpt nicely there, and the wrist swivel, well, it doesn't. I really wish there was a double-jointed elbow, because the lack of a double-jointed elbow makes me feel like I'm not quite getting the value I wish I was. Otherwise, the arm posability is pretty decent, although, try as he might, he just can't quite reach his sword. Moving into the realm of his nippled bare blue chest, Skeletor's ab crunch is copious and delightful. It's one of my favorite joints in this line, because this is how you add personality to your posing options. The cut waist also helps, and I'm very glad it's in there. It's a logical place to put it. As this is a reissue Skeletor, his loincloth is not too solid for him to bend his legs forward. The reissue made this a little bit more rubbery, I believe. So he can kick, baby! He can kick! If you want him to sit down, that's about as far forward as it goes. So this dude can totally, ride things, but he'll have a lot of trouble sitting in a chair. The knee is, again, only a single joint, and this is a case where I think a double joint was really needed, because single-jointed elbows and knees always make things feel just a little bit low-tech to me, especially on a non-transforming simple-action figure. The kneecap sculpt, I think, would have been a perfect place to just put a joint in, and then put a couple of pegs in here, and boom, there's your daddy. One more very smart and logical piece of articulation is the boot swivel that assists with the ankle joint. Now, there is a forward and backward hinge, that's all good and given, but there's also a bit of a tilt. Now, this tilt for a while I thought was just a case of shoddy QC, but I've been led to understand, this is actually intentional, and I love this kind of joint. I just wish it didn't feel quite as haphazard or even sort of accidental. But on the bright side, with all those things in place, you can kind of get him to do more than at least I thought he was going to be able to do when I saw pictures. I thought these guys were going to be kind of like those toys where there's a lot of joints, but none of them really work well in tandem. And if there's one thing that the Masters of the Universe Classics has done right, it's to get the joints to work in tandem. Even though there are small limitations here and there where I wish things were done a little bit differently, I was very impressed with the options on this guy. He's not always stuck looking like he's in a muscle man pose. You can have him stand stock still, you can have him do actiony things with his accessories. There are just enough options in the posing for me to feel like I got an adequate amount of articulation.
I've bested 2 of your mightiest, you foolish heroes! Think I'm still small? Still old and forgettable? Think again, you metallic morons! I am Skeletor, evil lord of destruction! And you, Iron Man and War Man, or whatever you call yourselves, you'll be the next examples I make!
Wonder Break Pistol was wounded, but he's defeated Riddick! Furious! We won't go down without a fight! If I had my proton cannon...
Why don't you have a taste of my fully charged super meter, you boobs?
Skeletor has a small but effective array of accessories. Most blatantly would be his iconic Doom Wizard Skull Staff thing. I am so into the fiction. He's also got a purple sword, but this one has something weird about it because it's flat on the back. This is part of some gimmick based on the old-timey mini-comics, I believe, from the 80s toys, where he had a purple half-sword and He-Man had a gray half-sword, and you could combine them together to make a half-and-half sword, and it doesn't really work because this thing's all bent up from being in the package. I don't know. I don't have a He-Man with this sword to try it out with. But he also comes with a full-on purple one, which I like much better. With this being the reissue Skeletor, he does have a different hand sculpt, so he's able to hold things in either hand. And again, thanks to his modern articulation, he looks pretty good holding either accessory, or even dual-wielding his 1.5 swords. There's also a holster for one of the swords on the back of his armor. So this guy's pretty good at being self-contained as far as his accessories go. The paint is clean, and the sculpt is, if a little simple, very retro-evocative. Really, this guy is a case where you have to kinda dig the old-timey look, but just gaze into the face of Skeletor. If that does not win you over, this won't be the toy for you. But if you're seeing something that you can respect, fear, and perhaps even idolize, then I think you might have found something to look for. On the fair and equitable secondary market! Skeletor's main problems, outside of a few limitations in the posability, would be the QC, quality control. This is something that has been the bane of many Masters of the Universe Classics collectors, but the best way to describe it would really be that elbow of his that's holding his staff up sometimes has trouble holding that staff up when it's not balanced on the ground. And his ankles, well, sometimes I've had him standing like this, and then, a gust of wind comes by, or you tap him, and his ankles, they start to tilt and tilt and tilt until that happens. So with Masters of the Universe Classics, it's a very tough call. The characters are really well represented. There are really cool accessories. Great sculpting by the Four Horsemen. And the posability, although I've come down a little bit on the lack of double-jointed elbows and knees, is markedly more effective than I anticipated. And anyone who loved Skeletor as a kid really should try to track one of these down, just, not for $50. Anyway, this has been Internet Personality Vangelus. I hope this review's been helpful to you in some way. And I gotta admit, Skeletor was kinda low on my priorities in this line. There were 2 in particular who I was far more interested in. But evil ghosts and maniacal hordes will have to wait for another day. Keep it real, Eternians!
Thanks for the workout, War Man!
Machine.
Modernization is a wonderful thing! Now, I am the most powerful plastic pillager of pain on this desk! Finally, Skeletor's day of reckoning has come! I must rally my minions, and then they will all show me respect, and fear! Eh? Who's there? Is that you, Merman? Excellent! Find Beastman and try Man! Clops! For soon we shall... You're not my man! Who are you? Identify yourself! I, Skeletor, command... What are you doing? You cannot overpower my modernization! Impossible! How can there be another figure with greater engineering